Hi there, and welcome to the studio. Today we're going to take a brief walkthrough so that those of you who enjoy the music that I'm making can get a little bit of an overview of how it's put together. Side note, this was filmed over a period of 3 days, 2.5 of which I didn't sleep at all. So you might hear, in some scenes, that my voice is low and gravelly. That's me trying to keep quiet so I don't wake everybody upstairs. Okay, hopefully in future videos we can keep the voice consistent throughout the whole thing. No promises though. This isn't Capitol Records. Hope you enjoy it. Let's go. Now I know quite a few people have elaborate collections of microphones, but I find that I could get by with just two. This Shure SM58 that I got when I first started, and this Neumann U87 AI. The SM58 normally stays by the desk with a set of index cards, so I could write lyrics and lay guide vocals down. There have been several occasions though, where it was the vocal recorded on the SM58 that got used in the end, either on its own or blended in with the vocal tracked on the U87. Now for the microphones, I'll use the center section on the solid-state Logic Nucleus, which has some really nice analog preamps. But these days I'm mainly tracking guitars straight into the board, using a Roland GP100, a Boss GT Pro, or one of my new favorites, the Boss GT1000. Mostly what I'm doing is just going in there and nulling out all of the parameters of the presets and building everything from the ground up. If only I could muster that much dedication when it comes to actually practicing the guitar. But we'll leave that as it is. Well, I guess now's as good a time as any to show you the guitars I've been working with. Now somebody's gonna count how many times I use the words custom or modified. Fact is, I've been working on guitars for the last 16 years. I know what sound I'm looking for, and I know what it takes to get there. Each and every one of these guitars could be the subject of their own video. However, just to keep the flow of this tour going, let's do a quick rundown. Custom 63 Jazzmaster in Clapton Gray. Custom Robert Smith Jazzmaster in the Top Black with a real Woolworth Top 20 pickup. A heavily modded Player Series P bass made to sound like the 1967 one I sold about 10 years ago. A custom 63 Sparkle Jet, custom 62 Bass 6, and a custom 1965 Electric 12. This is a heavily modded electric choral sitar. This here is a Hooky 6 that I got to replace a real Shergold Marathon 6 that I sold back in 2012. They're uncomfortable to play, but they really sound good. A Made in Japan 1962 Stratocaster reissue. A heavily modded Made in Japan traditional 60s Jazzmaster. Custom 62 Jaguar, a custom 67 Bass 6, and an Ovation Balladeer 1112L with a deep bowl and a V-neck profile from 1981. And some more interesting projects to come. With all these guitars laying around, there's got to be at least one amplifier. Well, actually, there's two, and they're both JC40 40th anniversary jazz choruses from Roland. Years ago I used to rely a lot on amps for my tone, but now since I got into digital processing and eventides and all kinds of stuff like that, most of my sound is created with all of those modules. So I don't want the amp adding more color at the end, because I'm already, I'm cooking with all the spices, right? So this gives me a nice clean output. The only problem is it takes and sends instrument levels, one way or another, no matter how you cut it. So when I'm playing live, or if I really want to do sound design, I will just run the mixer's output to a set of Genelecs so I get a flat response and really know what's going on with my processing alone. Alright, speaking of that, let me take you upstairs for a minute and I'll show you the two mobile rigs. Welcome to the living room, or as it's rapidly becoming known as, Studio B. Up here I keep my live rack, and since there haven't been any gigs lately, really I'm just using it with my sons to perform for the family. It's kind of like the upright piano in Little Women, only if Biff got hold of the almanac. The rack is being fed by a Boss GT1000, and it consists of an Eventide H8000 FW, a Lexicon PCM81, and a Tascam LM8ST stereo line mixer. It's cooled by an AC Infinity Cloudplate T5, and it's powered by a Furman PL Plus DMC. Playback or amplification is through a set of Genelec 8040 BPMs. This is the second rack that we have upstairs, consisting of an Eventide H9000 and a Lexicon Alex being fed by a Roland GP100 through a Tascam LM8ST stereo line mixer. This was initially put together for me to test the Eventide H9000, which I've been working with diligently for about a year now. Coupled with his Roland JU06A, my son's been using it along with the Roland VS2000 to produce his own music. When not in use, he keeps it covered with this shirt that a good man named James gave to him for inspiration. Alright, let's get back down to Hitchcock's lair for some more show and tell. Here's my IKEA spice rack filled with guitar pedals, mostly Boss Japanese ones from early 90s back to the 70s. This is an Electro-Harmonix Mel 9, which is supposed to take your guitar sound and transform it into the sound of the Mellotron. I don't find that it does that exactly, but it can be used for background treatments, at least in the work that I do. This here is the pedal board, but we're going to keep its contents under wraps, at least for now. What's in the box? This here is what I call the Unbalanced Rack. It consists of Roland GP100 with two Boss SE70s in series in its effects loop. From its stereo output A, it hits the Rane SM26 mixer, and its stereo output B goes to another Boss SE70, which then feeds a Boss VF1, which goes to the Rane SM26. Also in the SM26 is an RE201 Space Echo, which is one of the first effects devices I've ever picked up, and a Mel 9 pedal from Electro-Harmonix. This SM26 then goes to a Rane Balance Buddy. That allows everything to get transformer balanced before it gets sent over to the main board. Effects. Here we have a Lexicon 300 running version 3.5 in series with and in parallel to a Lexicon PCM81 with the Dual Effects algorithm card. We have an Eventide H3500 with the HS395 sampling board, an Eventide Eclipse, and two Eventide H8000 FWs, which are run one through another using the AES EBU protocol, all 4 channels, and we also have analog ins and outs going to the Patchbay. So lots of routing capabilities within the machine and on the external side of things. The H8000s are controlled over Ethernet using this handy Eventide EveNet network remote controller. And for straight reverb, both realistic and fantastic, the Bricasti M7 running version 2. It's good. If I want a sound source to jump out of the speakers and really fly around the room, I'll process it through the Roland RSS-10, seen here. I also use an RSS-303 ambient system, which tends to create a halo around the source and let it sit in a distinct area of a mix without it sounding washy and reverberated. The Roland RSS-10 can be controlled using the MCR8 multi-controller, seen here, and the RSS-303 has this neat little remote which allows you to select from any one of 3 presets and also just mute or bypass the effect. This is the looping rack, which consists of a Looperlative LP1 feeding an Electrix repeater on the latest software version. I'll normally use the FS300 foot switch to lay down some basic ideas with the looper, but if I need more fine control, I'll bring in the Roland FC200 MIDI foot controller. This here is the Roland Integra 7. It's the only synth I chose to keep out of a large collection of vintage ones that I had years ago. Really, it just gets used for what they call bread and butter effects, and it does them quite well. If it wasn't for this machine, no one would think I know how to play the saxophone. I don't think I do. Never tried. Paper thin walls. The MIDI keyboard I'm currently using is the Keylab 49 made by Arturia. I basically just use it to play synth, and occasionally I'll use the onboard drum pads, which are quite stiff and they don't have a lot of nuance to them. For full-on drum production though, I'm using the Roland MV8800 scene there with the optional MV8 OP1 card, which gives you 8 outputs so you can record it into a desk like you've mic'd a real drum kit. It's a great machine and it stands up even to this day. Over here is a Roland SPD-20, which could be used standalone as it contains its own sound sample libraries, or it could be used to trigger other MIDI devices. Down here at the bottom, I have a set of Edirol UM880s, which are MIDI Patchbays that I can use any of my MIDI controllers to control any of my machines through. Right now, when it comes to guitar, in the studio my foot controller of choice is the Roland FC300. Here's the mixing and mastering area where I'm employing a solid-state logic nucleus and listening back on any one of 3 sets of monitors at a given time, which all have their own unique sonic profile. What this does is it helps me understand how things are coming together as I go through the process of creating, recording, mixing, and finally mastering a song so that it's ready for you to hear. I also have a subwoofer here which pulls all the frequencies from 85 Hz and below out of the main monitors so that I could hear a little bit more clearly and feel the bass rather than having to listen to it. It could be brought in and out with this handy little foot switch here. The monitors are seamlessly switched between one another using this MS6R from Coleman Audio, which is conveniently located so I could just flick it with my left hand without moving my head away from the sweet spot in the listening position. To track, I'm normally using MDR 7506s or MDR V600s. When it comes to taming a bright and abrasive mid-range, the 7506 is the tool of choice. But when I want to tighten up the bass and remove the tubbiness that seems to eat up all the space in a mix, the V600s help me make short work of it. When it comes to mastering, or when my ears generally need a break, I'll grab these Shure SRH 1840 open back headphones. They have a practical, transparent sound, they're comfortable to wear for hours, and they don't cause ear fatigue as long as you listen at reasonable levels. For dynamics, limiting, compression, I basically just use a Ure 1178 and a UBK Fatso. The two of those, out of all the things that have come and gone over the years, have really become staples in my studio. This is a handmade gain pedal that I have sidechained with the Fatso. It allows me to control the amount of tape saturation I get, independent of how much compression is being applied when it goes through the module. Here are a set of Pultec EQM1S3s. They're normally the first link in the mastering chain, but they sound so good even on bypass that I'm normally just tracking through them, unless there's a good reason not to. This is the Rupert Neve Designs Portico 2 Master Bus Processor with a Rane MQ302L graphic equalizer in the sidechain. 90% of the time, this is the last dynamics processor that I use in my mastering chain. Silky. I've wired everything in the back here point to point, mostly using Mogami W2799 miniature quad console cable, even the D-subs. Here we have things linked up digitally via AES EBU. Here's our network, Ethernet remote, stuff like that. This is for VSIG file, serial to USB. We got all the audio going to the right side. We've got all the power going to the left side, and wherever the audio and the power have to cross, I do it at a 90-degree angle.
Prepare to strike. Now! Lights out! Now you wanna get nuts? The mark of my dignity shall scar thy DNA.
So, how does all this come together in the end? Well, I have all of my sound sources going into input channels in the Mackie 1604 VLZ Pro, and I have all the analog outboard along with the auxes and inserts from the VLZ, and sends and returns from the DAW going to this nice machine here called the Xbase 64. This is Xbase 64, where everything gets routed. It's a digitally controlled analog Patchbay. There's no headroom issues like I used to have on the Sound Sculpture Switchblade, which operates at a maximum of plus 6 dBu. And all this gear is able to be switched in and out seamlessly using Xbay OS on my PC. This here is the back of Xbase 64, where it has all the ins and outs of the different processors I've shown you so far. It all gets pulled into the mixer, and from the mixer it goes to the Fireface 800. The Fireface 800 is a digital audio interface that takes all of this analog beauty, translates it to ones and zeros, and sends it over to the PC via FireWire. I'm recording everything into Reaper using a PC running on Windows 7. The PC is the Lenovo W530 with a 3940XM processor running at 3 and 3.2 GHz. It has 32 GB of memory, and it has a second solid-state hard drive in the place where the wireless card would normally go. I also have a 256 GB SD card in there and a 500 GB solid-state drive. Backups are done on any one of 10 1 TB Seagate Backup Plus SSDs. The output of the PC is routed over to this 27-inch BenQ iCare display via DVI-D. Right here is the solid-state logic nucleus that I referred to earlier, which I'm using as a digital audio workstation controller, and I'm also using the two analog preamps that come built in. Output from the mixer and playback from the DAW come into the nucleus's monitoring section via two balanced XLRs, allowing for latency-free direct monitoring. The signal is then sent from this section over to the monitor switcher. The nucleus allows for two sets of headphones to be used simultaneously with shared volume control. The volume can be set independently of the levels going over to the main monitors. And since the nucleus provides a generous amount of USB inputs, I simply plug in a mouse and a keyboard, and I'm all set to go right from the listening position. And that's all it takes. This here's the lecture board that I use when I give seminars in health and philosophy.
I want you to remember this face here, okay? This is the guy behind the guy behind the guy.
Music's really just a side bit. That concludes our brief studio walkthrough. If there was any piece of equipment that I passed over and you'd like to know more about it, please let me know in the comments section below, and maybe we'll get a video made. Also, if you enjoyed the video, be sure to press the like button, hit the notification bell so you'll be kept aware of new videos that are uploaded, and by all means, subscribe to the channel. Subscriptions help, and let's build this thing together. Thank you so much for watching, and I will see you next time.